Two children are missing from Idaho, and they could be on their way here to Utah.
It wasn't a kidnapping that started with a scream or a break-in. There were no smashed windows, no tire tracks tearing out of a driveway. What happened to Relle and Relle Fischer began in silence.
On Sunday, Elizabeth Roundy's children, 13-year-old Relle Fischer and 15-year-old Relle Fischer, went missing from their home in Mountain View, Idaho.
Inside a quiet Idaho home. Relle was 15. Relle, just 13. They lived with their grandmother, Elizabeth Roundy, who had been their primary caregiver ever since their parents lost custody years earlier. By all accounts, it was a stable, loving environment. Relle was active on social media, loved photography, and had dreams of becoming a vet. Relle was quieter, bookish, and often trailed behind his sister like a shadow.
The children's mother says that they left a fundamentalist FLDS group and believes that they may have been kidnapped by a former member.
Then came the morning of April 28, 2024. Elizabeth went to check on the kids, only to find their beds empty. No note, no warning, just gone. She immediately called the police. Within hours, an Amber Alert was issued across Idaho. Flyers went up, media outlets picked up the story, and locals began organizing searches. But the deeper investigators dug, the more alarming the situation became.
We know she is not safe, especially based on the latest revelations that have been coming out of the church.
Security footage from a nearby gas station showed the two teens getting into a dark sedan around 2 a.m., accompanied by an adult woman. That woman, police soon confirmed, was their older half-sister, Melissa Fischer, a woman with a long and complicated history, and one deeply tied to a name Idaho authorities knew all too well: the FLDS.
Toole and Roundy say they fear the children were taken by their older sister, who is still in the FLDS group.
The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a cult, a closed society, and in the eyes of many, a predator of children. Melissa had reportedly reconnected with Relle via Instagram months earlier, slowly reintroducing herself into the teenagers' lives. Messages between them revealed a bond forming, talk of rebuilding family and finding real truth. What no one realized was that Melissa had plans far beyond a family reunion.
She says that she fears this religious extremist group could be putting her children's life at risk.
She'd been living off the grid for nearly a year, and based on the last ping from her phone, captured hours after the kids vanished, she was headed south, possibly toward Utah, possibly toward Arizona, toward FLDS territory. And just like that, the trail went cold. The search for Relle and Relle quickly became a race against time. The longer they were gone, the more likely it became that they were being hidden, or worse, indoctrinated. Authorities discovered Melissa Fischer had spent her late teens inside an FLDS compound in southern Utah.
I let them go down to the shop, and when I come back to get them, they were gone.
She'd left in her early 20s, according to court records, after being part of a custody battle involving another family member. But whispers from former members suggested she never truly left the ideology behind. They claimed she still held tightly to FLDS teachings, especially the belief that families outside the church were broken vessels.
In 2020, she and her youngest children left the FLDS group, which has allegedly been involved in criminal activity,
and that children could be saved by being brought home. Phone records showed that Melissa had been using encrypted apps like Telegram and Signal to communicate. Investigators believed she had help, possibly from current FLDS followers, who provided burner phones, temporary vehicles, and even shelter as she moved across state lines. The vehicle she used to pick up the teens? Registered to a shell company in Arizona with suspected ties to the FLDS network. By May 3rd, the Amber Alert had reached as far as Colorado and Nevada, but there were no new sightings, no surveillance hits.
What do you want police to do?
I want them to put out an Amber Alert and treat it like a kidnapping, because it is.
It was as if Melissa, Relle, and Relle had vanished into the desert. Meanwhile, their grandmother, Elizabeth, was left spiraling. She loved those kids like they were her own, a family friend told the Idaho Statesman. She never imagined Melissa would do something like this. But Elizabeth wasn't just heartbroken, she was angry. She blamed state officials for not acting sooner. Months before the abduction, she had reported suspicious messages and behavior. Screenshots of Melissa's DMs with Relle.
Call me. I'll come get you in a heartbeat. I love you.
A package sent from an unknown address. But she says no one took it seriously. Child Services chalked it up to reunification curiosity. Police told her there wasn't enough for a restraining order. And so, the warnings went unheeded. The Fischer children weren't just taken, they were failed. First by their families' past, and then by the very systems meant to protect them. To understand what Relle and Alan may have been pulled into, you have to understand what the FLDS really is, and what it's done to families before. The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints began as a splinter group from mainstream Mormonism after the LDS Church officially renounced polygamy in 1890. But for the FLDS, plural marriage wasn't just doctrine. It was salvation. Members believed the more wives a man had, the higher his exaltation in the afterlife.
We believe the children left in a gray Honda sedan from Idaho.
Girls as young as 12 were groomed for celestial unions, often married off to much older men, sometimes even relatives. By the early 2000s, the FLDS had become a closed society centered in twin border towns, Hilldale, Utah, and Colorado City, Arizona, collectively nicknamed Short Creek. The group controlled local government, law enforcement, schools, even food distribution. Outsiders were watched, defectors were shunned, and under Warren Jeffs, obedience became absolute. When Jeffs was arrested in 2006 and later convicted of sexually assaulting 2 child brides, many thought the FLDS would crumble. But it didn't. Instead, the group went underground, fragmented but unbroken. Makeshift compounds popped up across the Southwest, and former members say Jeffs continued issuing revelations from prison, controlling marriages and family units by proxy. That's the world Melissa Fischer had likely re-entered.
I love them and hope they'll come home.
And if she took Relle and Alan with her, they might be lost in a maze of hidden enclaves, off-grid communities, and tightly guarded compounds where outsiders are never welcome. One former FLDS member, who asked to remain anonymous, spoke to the Salt Lake Tribune about how these reintroductions happen. They'll say it's a rescue, that the kids were in danger of going to hell, that the outside world is Babylon. They'll give the children new names, take away their phones, and cut them off from everyone they knew. Another former insider, Alyssa Wall, whose testimony helped convict Warren Jeffs, shared a chilling insight during a recent podcast. Once you're in, it's like disappearing in plain sight. Kids don't scream for help because they're taught the outside world is evil. They think they're being saved. This made the Fischer case all the more urgent. Child protection advocates feared the children could be subjected to early marriage, isolation, or psychological indoctrination. But law enforcement's hands were tied. Unless clear evidence of abuse surfaced, or unless the children made contact themselves, there was little legal ground for a rescue. The FLDS community had become masterful at avoiding detection. Homes are registered under shell names. Vehicles are swapped between compounds. Birth certificates are withheld. And children are often homeschooled, leaving no attendance trail. A former FBI profiler told NBC News, "They've built an infrastructure for erasure. You don't just find these kids. You infiltrate a belief system." The question now was whether Relle and Alan even wanted to be found. Had Melissa convinced them their old life was broken? Had the promises of unity and religious purpose outweighed the safety of home? Elizabeth Roundy feared the worst. If she took them to one of those places, she said in a press interview, they might already believe I'm the enemy. And the worst-case scenario? That her children weren't just missing. They were being remade. Weeks passed, then months, and still, no trace of Relle or Alan. The Amber Alert was canceled, not because they were found, but because leads dried up. Melissa Fischer was officially charged with custodial interference, and a federal warrant was issued. But the case soon slipped out of the news cycle. Another cold file in a growing archive of missing children. Their grandmother still holds out hope. She believes someone, somewhere, knows something. That maybe another ex-FLDS member will come forward. That one day, a tip will lead to a compound, or a call will come from a payphone. "I leave their bedroom the same," she told KTVB, "just in case they come home." Meanwhile, the FLDS continues, quiet, elusive, and largely untouched. Despite decades of scrutiny and law enforcement pressure, the group has proven remarkably resilient. A 2023 investigation by Vice News revealed that hundreds of FLDS followers still live in isolated communities, many off the books, many raising children in the same conditions that led to past tragedies. The Fischer case has prompted renewed calls for better monitoring of cult-adjacent religious groups, especially those with a history of child exploitation. Advocates argue for stricter oversight of homeschooling networks, mandatory tracking of custody cases involving high-risk groups, and expanded powers for CPS to intervene when there's evidence of grooming. But legislation is slow, and children once taken are often lost for years, if not forever. The last verified sighting of Rochelle and Alan remains that grainy gas station video. Two kids stepping into the unknown, believing they were going towards something better, maybe even something divine. But for those left behind, the silence is deafening. No texts, no calls, no birthdays, just questions echoing through every sleepless night. What were they told? What do they believe now? And if you grow up inside a lie, would you even know to escape it? This is Vaulted Crimes, real stories, real consequences,